Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to the TCEC second division. So the second division is now over. The winner of the second division is this top engine Fire. I have covered already one game of this top engine, and Fire will move up to the first division. Then we'll have the Premier division in which Lila C0 and these other top engines like Stockfish, Ellenstein and many of these great top engines will then join in the Premier division, and then we'll have a really great tournament, I think. Then after the Premier division will have again the super final. I'm expecting again maybe Stockfish versus Lila C0, but before this happens, of course I wanted to check out more games, and this engine Fire played really some great chess. Today I wanted to show you also a great game. It was against another great engine Pesto in the French defense, and for those who are maybe playing the French defense, I think you won't like this game because I myself, I'm not such a French defense fan, because you see the problems of the French defense. You get always kicked away in the center, and that's why I basically don't like to play, because there are these positional problems which Fire exploit in this particular game that I wanted to show today. So let's see the game. We have here e4 by Fire, e6 by Pesto, d4, d5, and now knight to c3. After bishop to b4, we have the winner variation. The idea of this move is of course the spinning idea. Then of course we'll try here to attack this weak e4 square. That's why here Fire of course pushes simply forward with the move e5. We have knight to e7 and now a3. This is a common theory. Of course, after bishop takes c3, b takes c3, there are these positional problems in white's position. Of course, with we have double pawns, so of course we have also this directed pawn structure in the center, so it means white will coordinate the attack on the king side because these pawns are showing us the direction. On the other hand, here black will try an attack on the queen side because black's pawns are of course aiming on the queen side. So c5, also common idea, simply cracking the position in the center. And there are also some threats to play queen to a5, which Pesto will also play in the continuation of the game. And now the most natural way is to proceed here with the move queen to g4, attacking here the g7 pawn. And most of the times you see that black will try this move king to f8, simply hiding the king a little bit, and try a blocking system with the move g6, pardon me, with the move g6 here. Then maybe something like h5, knight to f5, creating really a blocking system here, because then we are keeping the position on the king side compact, not allowing some pawn breakthroughs. But here in the game, queen to a5 was played, and now bishop to d2. The common idea with if the position allows it, with even some tactical threats, so to play c4 and maybe take out c takes d5. If for instance this knight moves somewhere, this would be a very dangerous line. So here taking out the g7 pawn is not good, because you get queen to c3. You simply can take out the pawn, and if you try something like king to e2, then you see rook to g8 is very dangerous. You lose the rook because you have to retreat with the queen. So after bishop to d2, we have here simply castling by this engine Pesto, and you see already some problems in black's position. Of course, black will try to play this blocking system with knight to f5, trying to close the position on the king side, but there are still some worries, because after something like queen to h3, we can always kick away the knight with the move g4 and then open the position. There are even some threats to play bishop to h6 if the position again allows it, and even h4 h5 is possible. So simply pushing forward and try to open the position on the king side. In the game, bishop to d3 was played, and now knight to f5. This is the idea, closing the position. And here knight to f3. Maybe here a better line is to play queen to h3 after something like f6. You see it's still dangerous for black. Black will try to kick away this space advantage that white has created, because we have already a pawn on the 5th rank, which is very well supported. And here G4, you see, it's very dangerous after something like C4. If you try to close the position, bishop to E2 is the possibility, and after knight to E7, simply pushing forward with the move F4. After something like, I don't know, F takes E5, still we can recapture here with this F pawn, F takes E5, and now knight to F3, here castling, and you see all of these pieces are directed on the king side, and this would be, I think, also a very dangerous position for black. So, but in the game, knight to F3, played by instead of this queen to H3 idea, here knight to F3 was played, simply protecting this D4 pawn. In the game, C4 was played by Pesto, and now bishop takes F5. Now the position in the center is really closed. So, okay, black still has some opportunities to play something like B5 and the B4, of course, with the preparation A6, A5, maybe knight to C6. And after E takes F5, we have queen to G3, and still I like the white's position more because our pieces are much more active. This bishop is blocked out by its own pawn, so it's basically used just in order to protect this F5 pawn. On the other hand, we still have some possibilities to play this very dangerous move, bishop to H6, then G6 has to be played, and then maybe take out the rook. So this is a tactical idea. Of course, first of all, you have to castle and get out of this C3 weakness possibilities, because of course the black threat is always queen takes C3. So that's why in the game, king to H8 was played by Pesto, getting out of this G-file mess, and now we have castling played by H6, and you see the problems now for black. Black is trying, of course, something like maybe G5 here, because black has the pawn majority here on the king side, but you don't want, of course, to push pawns in front of your king. When you do that, then you weaken your pawn structure even further. Here maybe queen to A4 is a possibility, but I still think that you can cover everything with this move, queen to A2, simply protecting this pawn on C2, and you cannot attack, of course, the rook somehow, so everything is perfectly fine here on the queen side. We have everything protected, and now maybe we could try to push some pawns. Even G4 is the possibility, again, if the position allows it, and maybe knight to G5 here, creating immediate checkmate threats on H7. So that's why this H6 move is okay, but it weakens further the pawn structure in front of the king. Now we have queen to H4, and this is now already getting very dangerous, because there are now some tactical threats with bishop takes H6. For instance, if you play a passive move like knight to C6, then bishop takes H6 is immediate possible. Here after G takes H6, we have queen takes H6, and you see king to G8. I'm not seeing a clear way how I should protect this. This is, I think, even checkmate. After rook to D8, here we can play simply queen to H7, and here queen takes F7. It's a forced checkmate sequence. So unbelievable stuff already, very, very dangerous for black. So that's why king to G8, getting out of this mess, and here queen to H5 was played. Here again with some tactical possibilities, again to play this move bishop to H6, and here Pesto makes this inaccuracy, knight to C6, which cuts off a very important file, pardon me, rank here on the 6th rank, because the better idea is here to play queen to B6. You have to protect this H6 pawn. That's the main problem. After something like knight to H4, attacking this F5 pawn, here queen to E6 has to be played, and I think black has everything covered, so at least you can hang on to this position. But knight to C6 was really a mistake. Now bishop takes H6 anyway, simply sacrificing the bishop, and now after G takes H6, here queen takes H6, and now there is this threat again, knight to G5 with this H7 checkmate threat. So that's why Pesto played this defensive move F4, which is very important for this bishop, because we want to bishop to cover this H7, playing bishop to F5. Here, if you try, for instance, knight to G5 immediately, then bishop to F5 covers everything, and then after that we can try bishop to G6. Still, it's a very dangerous position for black, but I think this is perfectly fine. Black can hang on to this position. That's why here Fire played this accurate move, rook from a to e1, and this is what I always like in chess, when you simply apply the main principles in chess. And now we have the last piece that hasn't played so far, bringing the last piece into the attack, and it's very important. You see the importance of these rooks on the e and f file. They will really be dominant, and here the king is really naked, the king is really endangered. And now queen to c7 played by Pesto, trying to get another defender in front of the king, but queen to g5 was played, simply check. We have king to h7, and now queen to f4. Now you see the problems. Because this f4 pawn is not on the board, we have possibility to play rook to e3, and then maybe rook to g3, rook to h3. And in the game, queen to f6 was played, and now queen to h4, simply creating some checks. King to g7, and now e6. A very tricky move here by Fire, because this pawn now closes the light square bishop, and now this bishop is out of game. Basically you don't have any more defenders, and here rook to e8 was played, and there are now some possibilities for white. There are maybe some tactical possibilities, but here maybe rook to h8 had to be played by black, but still it's very dangerous because you get queen to g4. You see, if you try to compete here on the h file, then king to f8 has to be played, and now knight to h4 with this threat to play the move g6, knight to g6 with this fork. So if you try something like rook to g8, then knight to g6 anyway. For instance, if you get out of this mess, played something like king to e8, then queen to h5 is still very dangerous with some discovered attack possibilities. If you try, for instance, queen to g7, then knight to f4, simply creating this check, and after something like king to e7, we have rook to e3, and now this rook lift is very dangerous, because if you try to trade off the queens, okay, we can trade off the queens, it's not a problem. After rook takes g4, knight to d5 is very dangerous, creating this check. After something like king to d6, here knight takes f6, and whatever you do, okay, you have to retreat with your rook, but I still think this 5 pawns on the king side are simply too much to handle for black. Black has now 5 extra pawns for the piece, so this would be, I think, a completely winning endgame here for white. So still tricky really. I'm not seeing a clear line how black should proceed. So instead of this rook to h8, rook to e8 was played, trying to take out this very important pawn on e6. And here I want to pause the video and maybe try to find the best next move. It's not so easy to see. It's really a great tactical idea. Here Fire played that move. Take your time, maybe think about this position a little bit more, because it's always in chess how to activate all of your pieces. You want to include all of your pieces in the attack, and here Fire played, I think, a great attack. Here Fire played, I hope you could have found this move. If you have found this move, you're a really great tactician, because I couldn't see the move. It's the move knight to e5, and sacrificing another piece. There are now some possibilities here for black. First of all, let's see the possible continuation after f takes e5. Then we can play queen to g5, and simply creating this check. King to f8 would be sort of a possibility, and now queen to f6, creating this check. You cannot cover, of course, with the queen because of this very annoying pawn on e6. You have to play king to g8, and now we have rook to e3. This is now this main tactical threat that white has prepared here. This rook lift is very dangerous because you don't have any more pawns in front of your king. After something like queen to g7, this is the main tactical idea, rook to g3, and you lose the queen. So for instance, you can try rook to e7, but now we can simply take. We don't have to take the queen immediately. After something like bishop to e6, you see, now we can take. Rook takes g7, and here rook takes g7, and now queen to e6, I think, simply wins the game. So let's see the possible continuation here after this move knight to e5. If you take with the knight here, knight takes e5, then again d takes e5, again opening the position. After something like rook to e6, simply we can take e takes f6, here rook takes f6, but now rook to e8 is very dangerous. Now there is this threat to play queen to h8. So for instance, if you compete here on the h file again, then we have rook to e7, and I think again it's game over, because you can play of course king to g6 in order to protect the rook, but now first we take this rook with the check, queen takes h6, after king takes h6, rook takes c7, and again it's game over for black. 3 extra pawns here on the king side. We are up the exchange, so it's a completely winning endgame here for white. So great attack by Fire after this move knight to e5. You see how dangerous this move is. Really great attack. Here bishop takes e6 was played, and now rook to e3. Again, this tactical idea to play rook to g3. Here we have finally f takes e5, but it's a similar position like this ones before. Here we have simply rook to g3, king to f8, and now here f4. Very important move. You see how these rooks are really great here on this f and g file. The queen is perfectly fine. Now we have this heavy artillery attacking the king. The king is basically helpless. There are, if you try for instance here e4, it seems like a good move because you're closing the position, but now simply f5, pushing forward after something like bishop to g7, g8, here queen to f6, again a very dangerous move. If you try to cover with the queen, then we have queen to d6. There are now some possibilities. For instance, if you cover here with the knight, then you get checkmated immediately. Queen to h6, you have to cover with the queen, and we have queen to g7, forced checkmate. So here in this position, if you try to cover with the rook, then we have this move f6. In the next move we'll take out the rook, so this pawn, you see how dangerous this pawn is, this mobile pawn. So again you lose the game. For instance, if you try to cover with the queen, then we have again this move queen to h6, and again here you lose it. For instance, the queen with the move rook to g7. So great stuff here that can happen after the move f4. You see e5 is e4 is not a possibility, so that's why queen to f7 was played, and now we have finally f takes e5, opening the position here for this rook. Here rook queen takes the rook on f1, king takes f1, and if we evaluate the position, okay, black has the rook and 2 pieces for the queen, but still here these are these 2 extra pawns. Here we have a very important pawn which creates some dangerous attacks. We have a very annoying pawn which is supported by this pawn on d4, so we have still some tactical threats here, even some checkmate threats. In the game, knight to d8 was played, trying to get another defender in front of the king. Queen to h6, we have king to e7, and now rook to g7, again attacking the king. You have to cover with the knight, but now queen to f6, creating this very annoying check. Now we have king to d7, and now simply taking 2 pieces for the rook. Bishop takes f7, queen takes f7, and now king to c6, again creating some checks. Here we have king to g5, b5, pardon me, and now queen to d6 with some checkmate threats here with the move queen to f4, queen to c5, queen to b4 are of course the possibilities. Here we have a5. For instance, if you play something like rook from a to d8 in order to attack the queen, then you see a4 is very tricky. If you take the pawn, then you get checkmated on b4. So for instance, you can try maybe something like king to a5, but again you get checkmated, queen to b4, and now after king to a6, queen to b5, and it's game over. So you see how Fire uses all of these pawns, all of these pieces in the attack. That's why what I like about this game. Here after the move queen to d6, a5 was played again, creating some breathing space for the king, but still queen takes d5, you have to go somewhere with your king. King to a6, here queen takes c4, again taking another pawn. Here king to a7, and now simply pushing forward. You cannot of course take the pawn because you get queen to d4. Here we have rook to d8, and now simply pushing forward, e6, Rook to f8, we have king to g1, and in this position this engine Pesto resigned. There is nothing that you can do here. We can try d6, simply pushing forward, even the possibilities e7 with the fork on both rooks. So this is simply too much to handle here, and in this position, as said, black resigned. So great attack by this engine fire with this bishop sacrifice on h6, and what I liked really this move, this knight to e5 move, which really opened the position for this heavy artillery for this rooks and the queen, and this was a great attack. So as I said, fire is moving up into this first division, then we'll have this Premier Division, but we'll see. There are still many top engines now. I really like it because this engineers of this top engines are really trying hard, and we'll have again, I think, a great season 17. But we'll see how fire also will continue in this first divisions. There are even some better, of course, chess engines, and I think that this is it. This is the limit for this engine fire. But okay, never say never. We'll see what will happen. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. I enjoyed it really a lot. It was a great attack. And meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games played by computers, and you can also watch my best chess games of all times if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.